Welcome to the Mango Effect podcast, where every Monday we explore a range of ideas and inspiration that all culminate in designing the lifestyle that we've always dreamed of. No topics are off limits. We get into the practical, the hypothetical, and the downright juicy stuff. And that is going to be juicy today. I'm really excited. So I'm Mindy Rosser, your host and lifestyle cheerleader, and I'm here today to talk about why your relationship does not need a label. So what do I actually mean by this? Okay, like Mindy, I read the title of this podcast and I'm thinking, what the heck is she talking about? All right, so I'm going to kind of give you a little sneak peek of my day today. This afternoon, my husband and I were sitting here talking, and we've been together for 10 years, going on 10 years, and let's see, very soon. And we were talking about the fact that we're going to be monogamous. And you may say, well, Mindy, okay, back up. What are you talking about? I will get there. But we looked at each other and we checked in with each other and we just said, you know what? I said it first. I'm like, I'm not interested in anyone else. I just want to be with you. And it was just kind of like this moment of celebration and kind of like peace and like the obvious thing. And it's really interesting. And I'm going to back up and give a little bit more context to the story. But Jason, my husband, he looked at me and said, yeah, me too. And I think it was just this moment where we have been through a lot. Emotionally, both of us, even in our backgrounds and how we grew up. But to get to this point where we both looked at each other and thought, you know, monogamy really isn't so bad. And who cares what label we put on our relationship? Because depending on the angle that you look at it, you could call it all sorts of different things. So we're going to talk about labels today. And I say to heck with labels. Like, I am so sick of labels, whether you are like monogamous or open or polyamorous or a relationship anarchist, or maybe your orientation. Are you straight? Are you queer? Are you gay? Are you bi? Are you non-binary, gender fluid, anything else? I mean, there are so many categories that we could put ourselves in. And to be quite honest, I have said yes to all of the above at some point in time. I have felt straight. I have felt queer. I have felt gay. I have felt bi. I have felt like I was much more of a non-binary person. I have felt gender fluid. I have been in all the different types of relationship combinations. And you know what? At the end of the day, I say I hate labels. I'm tired of labels because when we add labels to the human experience, often it either feels confining. In the moment, sometimes it can feel freeing because we're like, wow, I found a label that actually fits me. Well, right now. And for some of us, labels may not be a problem. But for a lot of us, I think labels are a huge issue because we get stuck and we see these labels, we think of these labels and we feel like, okay, we look at that label and we say, okay, so what does somebody that is fill in the blank label here supposed to do? We do some Googling, we do some searching, we talk to some friends, we do all this research, and then we try to become that label instead of us dictating what that label should be. Like, come up with your own label. I don't care. I want you to be yourself. And I think for me, this whole journey has been all about figuring out, Mindy, you just don't need a label. Nobody cares. Everyone just wants you to be happy. You just want everyone else to be happy. If we could all just be happy without labels, the world would be a better place. So let me give you a little more context to the story and kind of how it came to this. It's not a conclusion because I don't like conclusions. Life is always a journey. We're always evolving. So kind of backing up a long time ago, I'm not going to tell you exactly how long, but I grew up in a very Christian, cultic group. And yes, I am using the word cultic on a very serious level. It was definitely a cult. And I would say a lot of Christian organizations, most of them are not cults. They're just good people, you know, sharing a religious experience. You call it what you want. I am no longer associating myself with Christianity. That's not really where I am right now. I do consider myself a spiritual person. I have nothing against Christians. I have nothing against people that don't see the world the same way I do. But how I grew up was very, very limiting, and it was very stifling. So a lot of people have had a similar experience. I know I'm not the only one. And it was very, very challenging because inside of that group, we were only shown one model of relationship. That was one man, one woman for life. That was what they would say over and over again. And so that's all that I ever saw. And the man had to look a certain way and act a certain way, had to be very like hyper masculine. The woman had to look a certain way, be a certain way, and be very hyper feminine. And you had to fit these roles. You had to kind of like when I'm talking with labels, you had to fit the labels. And if you didn't, match up to the labels, then you were doing it wrong and it just wasn't going to work. You're going to end up in divorce or you're causing people to sin. I mean, there was all these different rabbit trails we could go down. So that was a very traumatic. It was very traumatic just seeing only one way of doing relationships. So growing up, I always thought, okay, all right. Okay, so I have to be this good little girl and I've got to be like hyper feminine. I've got to wear dresses. I've got to do my makeup, do my hair, do all this stuff. I've got to fit this label of what a good woman that's going to be a good wife is going to look like. And so that was very, very stressful. Partway through that journey, my birth father, I was about almost 12. Yeah. So it was probably pre-teens, right before my 12th birthday. My birth dad, actually passed away from HIV due to AIDS, and we weren't allowed to talk about it. And I didn't even know what the real cause was. They just told me it was cancer, and it took him really fast. It was lymphoma, and that was it. Later, come to find out, he was gay, and I had no idea because that just wasn't. My parents didn't want me to feel stigmatized by the church, by that religious group, by the cult. And so I was not even really informed as to my daddy's preferences and his orientation and how he wanted to interact in the world, whom he loved, all of that. So it was really, really challenging because I'm given this perception of what a good relationship looks like. One man, one woman for life. Then I see my daddy and I see how he suffered, especially at the end. He was very lonely. I wondered who all those guy friends were. I thought they were just friends. And now it all started to make sense. But at that point in time, I was so immersed in the group that I thought, okay, I'm just going to go harder. I'm going to prove to everyone that I am not gay. My brothers are not gay. And it was kind of like a mission. It was kind of like trying to overcompensate for this. And I never even considered at the time that I might not be straight, because I just didn't see things that way. I was just so doggedly going down this path. So I had no idea that I was straight for like a long time, or not straight for a very long time. So I played the whole straight game. I eventually left that group, thankfully, right around the age of 20. And I kind of started exploring the world, exploring other cultures, other religions, and kind of found myself ending up with my wonderful husband now, Jason, when I was 25. And so up to that point, I thought, yeah, I'm just straight. I didn't even think about women in that way. I always just assumed that, I would always be with a man, and that was how it went. Then I got pregnant. So I was pregnant with my daughter. She's now 8. And during that time, something shifted in me or I just recognized it at that point. And I realized I was not straight. I started seeing women differently. And there was something inside me that said, oh my God, Mindy, you are not straight. And I was terrified because I thought, these are probably just pregnancy hormones. They'll probably go away. No problem. But what that meant to me, there's that trauma from my past. And so not being straight was associated with my father passing away, horrible death, dying alone. And so I think subconsciously I was thinking, I don't want that to happen to me. I'm repeating the same thing from my father if I go down this road. So I hid it for years and I didn't talk about it, and I would make little jokes here and there, but I don't think they were really hinting at anything. I tried to just stuff it down, and that's so unhealthy. We all know this. You don't want to push it down because it's just going to bubble up and explode. So it did. It did. A few years later, bubbled up and exploded. And my poor husband, Jason, he was going through just being diagnosed with bipolar disorder, which is very, very challenging in itself if any of you are familiar with mental illness. And then right as he's talking about that, my emotions are all stirred up and I'm like, oh, by the way, I'm bisexual. Just like that, just like totally dropped a bomb on him. And he had no clue. Like there was nothing like in the past that he's like, huh, I wonder if you're bi. There was none of that. It was just like dropping a bomb on him. And from that, there was a lot of turmoil because we had to figure out, okay, so what does this mean? Are we staying together? Are you trying to want to date women? Like, are we opening up? What is this actually going to look like? What does this mean? And a lot of us have gone through this same scenario. I know I've talked to a lot of other women. I've heard a lot of stories too, a lot of Facebook groups and communities that I'm a part of. I've just read so many stories and just interacted with so many other people who have gone through a similar experience. When there is some discovery like that, sometimes you don't know, and like you don't know that it's really a thing. You think you can just bury it, but you can't. You try to bury it, it's going to come back and haunt you, bite you in the butt. So you really want to address those when they rise up, but I had always been the type that had pushed down my emotions. So to make a longer story short, that led the bisexual kind of revelation kind of led to us going down a path where we started exploring, okay, so, should we open our relationship in any way, shape, or form to kind of allow for this? And there was so much discussion, lots of tears, crying, very heated discussions. I mean, it's just a very emotional thing, I think, for both people, whether you are the partner of somebody who is coming out as something that you didn't know, whether that's, their orientation or the type of relationship that they want to be in. Like for a lot of people that are in a monogamous relationship and one of them comes out as polyamorous, that can be very challenging too. So there's so many different things when we discover something about our partner that we didn't know. There's a lot to process around that, and you have to give it that time and that space. And so we did. So we spent several months just talking through things. I started reading a lot of books on, orientation, on polyamory, open relationships, all of these different things, and just trying to figure out, okay, where am I? How do I actually feel? Trying to internalize all of that and figure out, okay, what does this mean for me? What does this mean for us? Do I still want to stay together with Jason? Do we need to break apart? Do we need to date separately? Do we need to date together? What does this actually look like? And it was a very, I would say a very confusing journey. And sometimes so it was about 4 years where we really went through this and tried to figure out, okay, should we put it on the back burner? Yeah, let's put it on the back burner for now. And then it would explode and come back up again, and it'd be on the front burner. And then we're wondering, are we staying together? Are we breaking up? What does life look like for us? And some moments just felt like we were so close, we were so together, and other moments just felt like I feel like the world is going to drop right out from under me, and that everything that I've worked so hard to create with my family, with my husband, with our kids, is just going to disappear into thin air just because of this orientation thing and because I see relationships differently or I want to explore these things. So what it came down to was really a lot of conversation, a lot of communication. And this past year, I felt like we finally had the time and the space to allow it to come to kind of like fruition. And it's like, okay, we've been kind of beating around the bush for like 4 years now. Where are you? And last year, midway through the year, I kind of came out and said, you know what? I'm not just bi. I really feel like I am more of a lesbian, that I feel much more on the sapphic end of the spectrum, because I really, truly do not find men attractive. And that is true. Like I look at a man, I'm like, okay, I guess you're an attractive male, but yeah, it doesn't do anything for me. And looking back in time, I see the patterns, and I'm like, I was smacking myself upside the head, like, oh my gosh, I was so into so many of my high school friends. I'm sorry if any of you are listening. There were a number of you that I crushed on that I didn't even know I was crushing on, because yeah, I was so caught up in that cult and the religion and not accepting, anything but straight. So what did that all mean? I thought I had totally dropped the bomb. I thought for sure, I'm like, this is it. This is it. Like, he's going to say, I could deal with the bisexual. Like, maybe we could do some polyamory stuff or date together, date separately, however that looks. But this whole, lesbian thing, this is it. So I was kind of prepared in my mind, like, I might have just dropped the final bomb and my dream life is over. And I think being at peace with that, in as much at peace as you can be in a moment like that, of rawness, of feeling, it was like, okay, how are we going to get through this? And what we decided to do was a really beautiful, I called it the beautiful 6-month experiment. And it was intense. It was challenging, but we sat down, we said, hey, I love you. You love me. Okay. So what are we going to do here? Cause I still love Jason. It wasn't like I didn't love him anymore or that there were, things I wanted to get rid of him and he didn't feel that he wanted to get rid of me. He still loved me as well. It was just like, how do we work through this? And so what we decided to do is to take 6 months where we just, no intimacy in that department. So we kind of took a break from that and we focused on just getting to know each other. Like, okay, like let's start over. Like let's take a breather, let's take a break, less physical touch, no intimacy in that department, and let's just figure out, do we still want to be together? Do we want to do life together? Maybe we can just do life together without that one component. Does that one component have to define our entire relationship? And our society tells us it does. Our society tells us that if we are not like madly in love with our person, that there's something wrong with us or that it's broken or that we have to go to therapy or that we can't figure it out or that we need to find it elsewhere or we need to add spiciness into the mix. Sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes you actually need to take out that component for a little bit and then say, interesting. I think I love you more than I did before. I'm actually getting to know you as a human. I am actually feeling like you are my best friend, that we can actually communicate. Or the exact opposite can happen where it's like, yeah, there really is nothing really holding us together and we need to part ways. But for me and for Jason, it was really this beautiful relationship that started developing because we took that one component out. And for him, I can't speak to his entire experience because I am not him. But the way that he described it to me was it was a very stressful thing for him, intimacy and his relationship based on a lot of stuff and trauma in his childhood that he had to work through. And this 6-month experiment kind of gave him the space to work through that, to, get started in therapy, to talk with other people and figure out where he stood. And during that time, he was also, encouraged by me, and encouraged to just date, like get to know other women and see if that's something that you're interested in. And we opened up our marriage in that way. And he went on a few dates and they just never panned out. It was kind of like, I've got it better at home. I'd rather be with my family and my wife. And we would just, chuckle about them afterwards. And they just didn't really lead anywhere tangible. And so I was watching what was going on with him. And I really wanted to go internal for me. I wasn't ready to date any other women or kind of explore that side in a relationship sense. And so I really focused much more on the internal work for me and just like having that pressure of the intimacy pressure like off the table and not feeling that I needed that to hold on to my relationship with Jason was so freeing. And I thought, if other people could just try a similar experiment, if they are encountering difficulties and they need some time and space, why not, instead of putting more pressure on the sex department, why not take that out for a while and see what happens? And we had friends that told Jason and, was like, you should just leave her. I would just leave her and, and, let her figure herself out. And then guys can go from there. And so he faced a lot of flack for his decision in staying with me, especially because I was out. I'm like, I'm out. I'm calling myself a lesbian. I feel sapphic. And I still do. That's the funny part. And I will get a lot of flack from the gay community because I am still with a man and I love him and I'm not leaving him. And I will get flack from the straight community, like you can't call yourself gay. You're with a man. So there's all of this labeling and judgment that comes along with the labels. And I think if we can just take ourselves out of all that judgment, take ourselves into a more blissful space and give ourselves time to process things and see where we are, we may be surprised at the outcome. So in this experiment, we didn't set a time limit on it. It was just like, okay, let's just see where this goes. And the further we got in, the happier we started to be. I started being able to communicate better around boundaries and what I needed in our relationship. He was able to do the same and confide in me. We were able to work through a lot of history and stuff from the past. individually. And then also we worked on our relationship together, not worrying about the sex stuff. And so I was the one who broke first. It was January 1st of 2022, and I said, I can't take this experiment anymore. Are you good if I call call it off? Because I really love you and I want to connect again in that intimate way. And it was the most beautiful moment in time where I don't want to cry, but just thinking back on it, he just looked at me across the table and I can remember how he looked. I remember how embarrassed I was. I'm like, I can't do it. I can't do it anymore. Can't do it anymore. He's like, you can't do what? I'm like, I just want to be with you in that way. And it just kind of, it was such a precious moment, and there was no judgment. He didn't judge me for wanting to be intimate again. He didn't judge me for like needing that time in that space. He didn't judge himself, and just that feeling of feeling completely loved and accepted in the moment by another fellow human was just the most beautiful gift I could have ever received. And I cherish that. And I know not everyone has that. But I think what I'm trying to say is, if you are with another human that you care deeply about and things are kind of rocky and you're trying to figure things out, but you still want to be with that human, then maybe there's an element in your relationship that you can, ice for a little while and kind of come back to it, or that you can work through, that would give you the result that you want, so you don't have to blow up everything. For me, it was really this fear of, okay, I've worked really hard to build this entire ecosystem that is our family. And I love everyone that's in our family. And just because I feel a certain way and I don't find men attractive and I'm not, sexually into men at all. And if I had my preference, gender wise, it'd be a woman, right? But I love this man and I want to stay together. And we have built something that is definitely, how do I want to put this? It's definitely worth doing life together. I think that's how I would put it. It's just, I love him so very much. He's like my soulmate. He's my friend. And just because my orientation doesn't exactly match his, that's okay. And I discovered this community called the Mixed Orientation Marriage, so MOM, community. And there are others like me in there, and reading a lot of their stories and just kind of how they worked through it. For those people that wanted to stay together, it can make sense and you can work through things and figure things out. And this was a beautiful way for me to make it okay in my mind. It's like, okay, our orientation doesn't have to match exactly. That's okay. Does that mean we can't still have fun? That we can't still enjoy each other's company? That we can't still figure out workarounds? And if we have to, explore some other paths down the road that are, I guess, less traditional, that's okay. But right now, I just looked at him today, just before this episode. I'm like, I have to record this now because I'm feeling the emotions and the passion. And it's just lighting me up and just saying, you know what? I'm good. You want to do like the rest of our life together? Let's do it. Let's do it. You and me, and we're not going to worry about any other people. We're not worried about dating other people. We're not stressed out about labels or orientation. I just love you as a human. Let's do this. So I guess my encouragement to you is, if you are feeling kind of lost in the relationship area, I know I did for so long, and I feel sometimes it's like you feel on and off again, and you're trying to kind of work through all of these different scenarios. I think what I just want you to know is, be true to yourself. Be authentic, be honest, even when it is really, really hard, even when you feel like you're throwing a bomb and that it's going to blow everything up. A lot of times it really doesn't, especially if the other human cares about you. If they're just kind of a little bit narcissistic, or they have, things that they have to work through and they only care about themselves and they're not willing to go down a non-traditional path with you. Okay, then you guys will have to figure that out. But if you have another human that just wants to be there with you and give you that space, give you that time, ask for that time, ask for that space, keep them apprised. It'll actually make you a better person in the long run, because you will be able to do all of that deep introspection and you have that space, and you can always create that space for yourself if you need it, and you need to say, hey, I really need like physical time away from you. I need to figure some stuff out. Then you ask for that, and you'd be surprised at how amazing that can be. No matter what the outcome is, whether you stay together, whether you break apart, whether you have an amicable separation, whatever that looks like, it can be a beautiful outcome for you. But you do have to do the hard work and go through it. You can't just keep pushing it down and avoiding it, because that will lead you nowhere, and you will become very frustrated, very anxious, very scared. There's so much emotionality, I think, wrapped up in that. So your relationship can be whatever you want it to be. You don't have to let society or even any subgroups tell you otherwise. Like, if you're happier and you're becoming a better version of yourself, then you're in the right relationship for you. Like, who cares what the other factors are? Who cares if people are judging you, saying, people would come up to Jason and ask him if we were having sex. I mean, it's not their place to ask him that, because I came out as lesbian. And it's just, people are going to judge. Let them do their judging. Who the heck cares? So I may get a lot of flack for this episode, because I don't buy into the labels that we need. Straight people think I'm weird. Gay people tell me I should leave my husband. Poly people advise me to stop being so stingy with my time, that I should, stop working on my business and go out there and date other people. Then there's the open crowd that tells me, oh, just take a chance. Just, go on some open dates. You guys can each date apart and it's going to be fine. But you know what? To all of y'all's out there, I am a happy human. And right now, I am on the path with another human that I'm excited about living life with together. And we're going to go down this path. And this path may have some more, turns. There may be some changes down the road. There may not be some changes. But I think the thing that I think about the most is that I'm happy and he's happy. And as long as each of us are happy individually and together, we're doing the right thing, no matter what it looks like, no matter what people say, no matter what orientation we want to call ourselves. He's kind of gone up and down the spectrum of gender and tried to figure out which gender he is too. So we each have our own things that we're going through, and that's okay. We love each other and we're together. So to heck with labels, right? To heck with labels. So if you're in a relationship and people are judging you, or you are judging it, or you're questioning, just ask yourself, are you happy? Are you good with this? Is it making you a happier human, a better human? Are you growing as a result of it? If you feel like none of that is happening, then it could be a toxic relationship that you need to get addressed. And sometimes toxic relationships can change. So if you love the human that's part of that relationship, get support, get help. I have a therapist that I talk with, and she has helped me through so many things. She's listened to my ups and downs and all arounds, and I'm not sure if I'm staying. I don't know. Should I go? I don't know. People are telling me, I'm a lesbian, so I should be doing this and that. But all of that is noise. When you really get still, when you really sit with your soul, that's where you will get your answers, and take as much time as you need to get there. They don't come fast, and I tried to make them come faster, and it didn't work. I really needed all of this 8+ years, and it's still gonna change. It's just part of being human. So just do some soul searching and realize, no matter what your relationship looks like, you don't need a label. If you don't want to label it, don't label it. It's fine. If a label makes you feel better, okay, go ahead. Throw a label on it. All right. So do you also like to explore and color outside the lines? It's messy, but it's really worth it, right, guys? It's really worth it, guys, gals, everybody's. So DM me on Instagram to share your take on this topic at Mango Effect Podcast, as we're all trying to figure out this relationships thing. It's never a one and done. We're all exploring. We're all figuring out what it looks like for us. Let's encourage and inspire each other, no matter what our relationships look like. Now, if you like what you hear, please subscribe to the Mango Effect Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss an episode. I'd absolutely love it if you could write a 5-star review for the show. We are a new show, so any reviews and subscribes we get will definitely help us as we grow. All right, I will talk to you all soon. Bye for now.